One of the biggest struggles for people training jiu-jitsu is analysis paralysis. Analysis paralysis is basically when you're in the middle of a roll and you get stuck in your head thinking about the next technique you want to do or trying to remember the details that you were taught in class. And this is really frustrating because you feel like you're trying to be a good student, you're trying to be technical, but it's actually making you perform worse. The first thing you need to understand is for techniques to work in jiu-jitsu, they have to be done at full speed. An analogy I always use is it's like trying to jump in slow motion. You can do everything technically correct, but if you don't use enough force, you won't go in the air. Counterintuitively, you will actually perform best in sparring when you turn your brain off and you just respond with whatever your instincts tell you. Of course, a lot of times your instincts are going to be really stupid and tell you to do dumb things, but that's the best option you have in the moment. The difficulty is even if when you stop to think, your brain comes up with a better option, usually by the time your brain gives you the new choice from thinking about it, it's going to be too late to do that move because you went too slow and your opponent had time to either A, identify what you're doing and counter it, or B, he just changed position by chance and it's no longer available. At least when you try 100% whatever your intuition gave you, if it was the right choice, the move will actually work because you're doing it at full speed and full resistance. And if it wasn't the right move, at least you learn that that move didn't work and you can, after the match, think back about what you did, correct it, and hopefully the next time you spar, make a better choice. But you have to try at full speed immediately the first instinct that comes to you. But this creates somewhat of a contradiction, that if you're learning all of this technique, but I'm telling you to just use your intuition in the moment, how do you bridge the gap between trying to make yourself become more technical, but also be present to the moment in sparring? So I'm gonna give you guys a few different ways you can deal with that now. Of course, on a simple level, that's basically what the idea of drilling is. Even though I'm going to explain to you a lot better ways about updating your technique than drilling, the basic idea of drilling is to spend enough time repeating the movement so that the likelihood during a normal sparring match, your brain will give you the good option at the right moment will go up. What you're doing with drilling is you're trying to reprogram your instincts and your pattern recognition so that when that position occurs in a real sparring match, your instincts naturally drive you to do the right move. But of course that takes time and there's actually much better ways to do this. The problem with drilling is a lot of times people do it with no resistance and you're not actually training your body to recognize the cues that cause you to do the move. So I instead often advise my students to start by doing specific sparring or specific training from very small contained positions that are easy to understand. If you're newer to jiu-jitsu, this can be things like starting with the triangle choke already on your opponent. The amount of options your opponent has when you start with just a triangle on them is significantly less than if you start with them standing and you having no grips. And of course, if you can't finish the triangle choke when you start in it, the chances of you finishing it starting in a regular match is even less. This gives you a way of sparring and training your pattern recognition to adapt to the cues your opponent has, while also making it a much easier task to solve. In addition with this, after each sequence of attempt, you start in a triangle choke and you try to finish, either you submit them or they escape, you can now stop and talk with your partner and assess and do that thinking portion, not during the sparring, and reflect on what you either did right or wrong, and then try the sequence again with resistance. If you over and over repeat this process of sparring in the position, failing, stop, think, discuss, and try again, it's a fast process to reprogramming the pattern recognition so that when these positions occur in a normal match, you're ready for them. And it's important to understand that your body does not understand the difference between specific sparring and regular sparring once you're in the position. If you're in a regular match and you get into a triangle choke, or your specific training and you start in a triangle choke, once you're in the triangle choke, it is the exact same thing. So by isolating jiu-jitsu down into multiple smaller positions, it becomes much easier to speed up the process of learning. If you're a little bit more advanced, You can get very niche with this. You can start in a specific spot, like in double sleeve guard, and tell your opponent the exact style of defense you want them to do. Because as you expand the positions more open, there's more complexity in what your opponent can do. You can play a lot with the rules and parameters of these games to maximize your learning process. Another amazing way to speed up the process of learning these patterns is utilizing both sparring footage and instructionals. Instructionals are pretty self-explanatory. If you watch an instructional, you're gonna better understand the position, assuming it's a good instructional. But the other one is watching sparring footage. Either A, a competition footage of someone in the same position you're in, or B, even your own sparring footage. Remember, you get better not necessarily when you get tougher and stronger. Of course that helps. But you get better when your brain learns better when to execute certain moves under the correct timing. And if you roll for 1 6-minute match, but when you go home, you watch video of that 6-minute match and you see the moments where there was an opening that you didn't take, you're training your pattern recognition to see the position that you didn't see during the match. That's going to cue your brain so that the next time you're actually in a match and that position occurs, the likelihood that your brain will subconsciously pull out a better option will go up significantly. The goal here is that when you're in normal sparring, be 100% present to the moment and just try to react fast to the things that are coming at you. And of course, you're gonna make mistakes, and that's when the real work comes in, is analyzing the rolls after the fact and trying to do the work to reprogram your muscle memory. But if you keep going into your normal sparring matches trying to think and be technical or focusing on using the technique you learned, it's not gonna work right, because very often the techniques only work when your opponent gives you certain responses. So if you already have in your head what you wanna do, it may not be the right choice, and you're often left trying to force things that aren't necessarily in the right situation. So if you can separate these two components of training, it'll both make regular sparring a lot more fun because you'll be relaxed and somewhat more meditative when you're doing it, and also make you more efficient with your time training doing drilling, specific sparring, and video studying. If you guys have more questions regarding this particular problem, be sure to leave a comment and let me know. I'm gonna try to really up these kind of talking videos because I feel like a lot of progress in jiu-jitsu is not just the technique, but about how you logically understand the learning process and how you approach building training habits and routines. And as always, if you like the content, like, share, subscribe. Thanks a lot.